Everyone. Today I'm going to read about Ben Gutman. Mr. Granite is from another planet. So let's start. Chapter 1. The boringest store in the world. My name is IJ and I hate school. Do you know which month are the best month of the year? July and August, of course, because there's no school over the summer. Yay! The only problem is that now it's September. Boo. Bummer after the summer. School starts tomorrow, so my mom said we have to go to the store called Staples to buy back to school supplies. Ugh, Staples is the boringest store in the history of the world. They don't sell video games or toys or any cool stuff. They just sell pens and pencils and other boring junk like that. My mom had a list of things I had to get for third grade. After we found the boring book covers, boring binders, boring colored pencils, and boring glue sticks, I wanted to get a pen with a laser beam in it. Laser beams are cool. I saw this movie where they used a laser beam to kill aliens from outer space, but they don't sell pens like that at Staples. They do have one cool thing, a copy machine. Copy machines are cool because you can put your head on the glass and make a funny pictures of your face. It only costs 8 cents, but you have to be sure to close your eyes or you'll go blind. I struck my head in the copy machine and closed my eyes. I was reaching for the start button when I heard the most horrible sounds in the history of the world. Hi, Arlo. Ugh, it was Andrea Young, this annoying girl in my class with curly brown hair. I hate her. Andrea calls me by my real name because she knows I don't like it. I took my hat off the copy machine. Andrea was with her mom, who looks just like Andrea but with wrinkles. Are you buying back to school supplies too, Arlo? Andrea asked. No, I told her. I'm skydiving. When somebody asks you a dumb question, you should always give them a dumb answer. That's the first rule of being a kid. I will never put my face in a copy machine, said Andrea. Why not? Because I'm one of a kind, Andrea said. You should put your face in a paper shredder instead, I suggested. Andrea rolled her eyes. Why can't a copy machine fall on her head? My mom and Andrea's mom were talking about the weather. Grown-ups are really interested in weather. Nobody knows why. So I forced to talk to Andrea. Which do you like better, Arlo? Andrea asked. This notebook with a picture of a kittens on it, or this one with an elephant on it? Do they have a notebook with a picture of elephants stomping on kittens? I asked. Andrea rolled her eyes again. Our mom said we could play around on the office chairs for a few minutes while they talk about the weather. Let's pretend we're grown-ups working in a real office, Andrea said. I sat at one of the desks and picked up a fake telephone. Sent over $1 million, I barked into the phone. Now. Where's my coffee? Andrea shouted. I'll die if I don't have coffee. You're fired, I barked again. Get out. Pretending to be a grown-up is fun. I need to file some report, Andrea said, and she rolled her chair over to a big filing cabinet. When she pulled it open, the most amazing thing in the history of the world happened. A hat popped out. Good days, mate, the hat said. Aha! We screamed. It was Mr. Granite, our new third grade teacher. Chapter 2. We won chocolate cake. The first day of school is the worst day of the year, but the nice thing in that is that third graders are allowed to ride their bikes to school. I rode with my friends Ryan and Michael. After we locked our bikes to the bike rack, we were told to go to the all-purpose room for an assembly. The teachers were sitting on the stage, and they were all wearing green t-shirts that said P.A.L. Paul on them. Mr. Clutch, our principal, was up there too. He was no hair at all. I mean none. Mr. Clutch was wearing a green shirt too, and his hat was even painted green. Mr. Clutch is not. Is it St. Patrick's Day? I asked. Neil Crouch, who we called the nude kid, even thought he wears clothes. Patrick's Day is in March, dumbhead, said Neil. So is your face, I replied. After we finished, Pledging the allegiance, Mr. Clutch went to the microphone. Welcome back to elementary school, he announced. I want to introduce the new members of our staff. This is Mr. Jeffy, our vice principal, and this is Mr. Brad, our school counselor, and over here is our new third grade teacher, Mr. Granite. A third of them stood up. Everybody clapped. I waved to Mr. Granite. I knew he was going to be my third grade teacher because I met him on the beach over the summer. I even saw him yesterday at Staples. We're wearing green today to show that elementary school cares about the environment, said Mr. Clutch. This year, we're going to use less energy, create less waste, and help the planet. The program will be under Mr. Granite's supervision. Wow, I whispered to Ryan. Mr. Granite has supervision. That means he can see through walls. You returning student know I like to challenge you, Mr. Clutch continued. So here's a new challenge. If elementary school is named the greenest school in the country of the month of September, we'll have an all-you-can-eat chocolate cake party. Yay! Everybody went crazy because we all loved chocolate cake. That's the first rule of being a kid. Chapter 3. Pedal Power. After the assembly, Mr. Granite led us to our new classroom. There were posters all over the walls with pictures of rockets, ships and stars and planets. It was cool, but the weird thing was, instead of desks, the room was filled with exercise bicycles. Why are there bikes in here? Asked this annoying girl named Emily, with Andrea's crybaby friend. It's part of my new PAL program, said Mr. Granite. Pedal and learn. Instead of burning coal or oil to get electricity to run our school, we're going to pedal these exercise bikes, so we'll learn new things, save energy, and get exercise all at the same time. It's a win-win. We get to ride bikes in school. Cool, bikes are fun. I have a trick bike at home. I hop on the bike between Michael and Ryan. In third grade, we're going to learn a lot about space, Mr. Granite told us. So start pedaling, Pauls. I know a poem about space, I said as I started to pedal my bike. Mr. Granite said I could recite it. It goes like this. Boys go to Mars to get candy bar. Girls go to Jupiter to get more stupider. That's not nice, Arlo, said Andrea. Neither is your face. As we pedaled our bikes, Mr. Granite told us a lot of stuff about the planet and stars. Did you know that Venus is the hottest planet? It can get up to 900 degrees free. There, I hope they have a lot of swimming pools on Venus because when I got really hot, I want to jump in the pool. Did you know what? That a day on Jupiter is less than 10 hours long? Did you know that astronauts are a little taller in space because there's no gravity to push their bones together? Did you know that the ancient Greeks called our galaxy the Milky Way because they thought it was made of drops of milk? Those Greeks were weird. It takes 8 minutes for the sun's light to reach Earth, Mr. Granite told us. So, if the sun exploded right now, we would still have 8 minutes to live. Emily jumped off her bike and started freaking out. 8 minutes to live? She yelled. We've got to do something. Then she went running out of the room. Emily's weird. At night, Mr. Granite told us, you can see over 1,000 stars with your naked eye. Everybody started giggling because Mr. Granite said the word naked. Anytime anybody says naked, you have to giggle. That's the first rule of being a kid. Now, Mr. Granite said, let's learn about earnestness. Everybody giggled again. It's hard to learn stuff new when your teacher keeps saying a word like naked and earnest. After a while, my legs started to feel tired. Riding a bike isn't nearly as much fun. When you're just staying in one place and learning stuff, I started to pedal slower. That's when something weird happened. The light went out. Suddenly, the class was dark. Eek! Screamed all the girls as if they'd never been in the dark before. Who turned out the light? Michael asked. You did, said Mr. Granite. You need to pedal faster. We all started pedaling faster, and the light went back on. Keep pedaling, shouted Mr. Granite. I thought I was going to die. Chapter 4. Going Green. Boy, Mr. Granite wasn't kidding about making elementary school green. Everybody was doing their part to save energy and help the environment. Miss Lazar, our school custodian, put solar panels up on the roof to collect the sun's rays and turn them into electricity. Miss Lazar is bizarre. Miss Hannah, our art teacher, hate throwing stuff away. She told us to bring in plastic bags from home instead of throwing them in the garbage. She showed us how to make plastic bags into butterflies, kites, and dream catchers. Miss Hannah is bananas. Mr. Doctor, our science teacher, is off his rocker. He has a car that runs on potatoes instead of gas. Mr. Doctor converted the school bus to run on potatoes too. And he helped Mr. Yonkers, our computer teacher, to hook up potatoes to power the school computers. So now she says that peace stand for potato computer. Mr. Yonkers is bonkers. Miss Cooney, our school nurse, brought a giant tube of toothpaste to school one day. It was about the size of a first grader. Miss Cooney is loony. She said that when you buy large sizes of stuff, you don't have to go to shopping so often. There's less waste and you save money too. Mr. Lagrange, our lunch lady, told us pack our lunches in reusable containers instead of in paper bags so we have less garbage. She also brought in a bunch of cows to graze on the grass in the field behind the school. Now the lawn doesn't need to be mowed anymore. And we get free milk too. I don't know where Miss Lagrange got the cows. I guess she went to rent a cow. You can rent anything. Miss Lagrange is strange. mrs.Loopy, our librarian, read us a book about how trees give off oxygen, which is good stuff, and absorb carbon dioxide, which is bad stuff. Then she helped us plant a tree in the middle of the library. Miss Loopy is loopy. And Mr. Clutch, well, he put up a giant windmill in the field behind the school. When the wind turns the blade of the windmill, it makes electricity. The whole school was going green. Part of the reason was that we all know it was good to save energy and reduce waste. The other part was that we all like chocolate cake. Do any of you have other ideas to help the environment? Mr. Granite asked us while we were paddling to nowhere. Little Miss, I know everything, was waving her hands in the air like she was trying to signal a boat across the ocean. But Mr. Granite called on me and said, so na boo boo on Andrea. I know a way to save energy, I said. You should close the school down and let us stay home all day. Then we could sit around and do nothing. That will save a lot of energy. Everybody laughed, even though I didn't say anything funny. How about you, Andrea? asked Mr. Granite. Can you think of another way we can help the environment? We could use both sides of every scrap of paper, Andrea said, and then we could recycle it. That's an excellent idea, Andrea, said Mr. Granite. Andrea stuck out her tongue at me. What is her problem? Oh snap, whispered Ryan. Andrea stuck her tongue out at UAJ. Are you gonna take that? At Andrea's house, I told the class. They use both sides of the toilet paper and then they recycle it. That's gross, Arlo, Andrea said. So is your face, I told her. Oh snap, said Ryan. Chapter 5. Goo Goo Gaga. We were just about to get on our exercise bikes the next morning when the school's security, Mr. Patty, made an announcement over the intercom. Teachers, please do not throw our teacups around the teacher's lawn. Thank you. That was weird. Okay, Paul, said Mr. Granite. It's time for language arts, so start pedaling. We all started pedaling, but we didn't learn anything about language arts because you will never believe in a million hundred years we walked into the door at that very moment. Nobody, because if you walk into a door, it will hurt, but you'll never believe who walked into the doorway. It was our old teacher, Miss Daisy. She was with her husband, Mr. Maggie, who was our reading teacher. We hadn't seen Miss Daisy since we graduated from second grade in June. Miss Daisy, we all shouted. Miss Daisy, said Mr. Granite, to what do we owe the pleasure of your company? That's grown-up talk for what are you doing here? I miss my kid, she replied. We miss you too, said Andrea, the big brown noser. Miss Daisy was holding something in her arms, but Bill couldn't see what it was because it was wrapped up in a pink blanket. Did you bring us a present? I asked. Not exactly, said Mr. Mackey. It's a baby. It's a baby, dumbhead, shouted Andrea. Miss Daisy had her baby. All the girls rushed over to look, as if having a baby is a big deal. What's her name? Andrea asked. Jackie, said Miss Daisy. Jackie Mackey. What a lovely name, Emily said. She's beautiful. She's adorable, Andrea said. She stinks, I said, holding my nose. I think Jackie just pooped, said Mr. Mackey. We'll change her diaper in a minute. I wasn't going too near that thing, especially after it pooped, but all the girls were coochie cooing and saying, goo goo gaga to Jackie Mackey. All babies say goo goo gaga. Nobody knows why. It must be the first rule of being a baby. I think Jackie looks just like you, Miss Daisy. I think Jackie looks like you, Miss Daisy, said Emily. No, said Andrea. I think Jackie looks just like you, Mr. Mackey. I think she looks just like Mr. Clutch, I said. She's as bald as a balloon. Arlo, that's mean, said Andrea. Well, it was true. All babies look alike anyway. Jackie Mackey started drooling and then she started blowing spit bubbles. Then she put her foot in her mouth and started sucking on her toes. I thought it was pretty disgusting, but the girls thought it was cute. I know that if I started drooling in school, blowing spit bubbles, and sucking on my toes, nobody would think it was cute. I would probably get kicked out of school. Wah! Jackie Mackey cried. Wah! I think she bit her own foot, I said. Jackie may be pooping some more, said Miss Daisy. We'll better get go now. Babies are weird. Chapter 6. English is weird. Okay, everyone, back on your box, Mr. Granite said. It's time for language art. Ugh, I hate language art. Language is boring. Art is boring, so there's nothing more boring than language art, except maybe math. Math is really boring. There are some things I don't understand about the English language, Mr. Granite told us. Like what? Asked Andrea. Little Miss No, it all keeps a dictionary on her desk so she can show everybody how smart she is. Why is it that noses run and feet smell? Mr. Granite replied. Shouldn't it be the other way around? What do you mean? Asked Emily. Well, it seems to be that feet should run and noses should smell, Mr. Granite said. So why do people say nose run and feet smells? It's just an expression, said Michael. It makes no sense, said Ryan. My feet don't smell, I said. They do too, AJ, said Neil, the new kid. When you had that sleepover at your house, I had to sleep with your feet in my face. A nose would run if it had legs, Michael said. Feet could smell if they had a nose, said Ryan. Yeah, if you had a nose attached to your foot could smell, I pointed out. Arlo, you're just trying to get out of doing math next period, said Andrea. I am not. R2. We went back and forth like that for a while until Mr. Granite told us to knock it off. Why are there no eggs in an eggplant? He asked the class. And why is there no ham in a hamburger? Hot dogs are made funny dogs, and a pineapple doesn't have apples in it, or pine for that matter. Mr. Granite is right, said Ryan. English is weird, I said. Why are boxing rings square? Asked Mr. Granite. If they're rings, they should be round. Yeah, some of the kids agreed. If one tooth and another tooth are called teeth, said Mr. Granite, and one goat and another goat are called geese, then why aren't one moose and another moose called meese? Yeah, Neil said, what's up with that? Why do we play at a recital and recite at a play? Said Mr. Granite. When the house burns up, how can it also burn down? And why do we drive on the parkway and park on the driveway? Yeah, everybody shouted. Mr. Granny's right, I said. The English language is messed up. If you ask me, we shall complain. Who are you going to complain to, Arlo? Asked Andrea. The President, I said. We shall write a letter to the President of the United States. Andrea rolled her eyes, but Mr. Granite says that writing a friendly letter to the President was a great idea. So nana boo boo on Andrea. Mr. Granite paper to everybody. It's hard to write while you're riding a bike, so I kept my letter short and sweet. Dear Mr. President, I am a third grade student at elementary school. I don't think it's fair that your feet smell. Do you have a nose attached to your foot? Sincerely, AJ. Chapter 7. Mr. Granite Goes Overboard. It was recess. We were on the swings in the playground. Me and the guys were talking about important stuff, like who won the big game last night. Andrea and her friends were talking about girly stuff, like what color they should paint their toenails. That's when Mr. Granite came over. He was carrying some kind of machine. Everybody up the swings, he shouted. Why, we all asked. I need to attach this generator to the top of the swing set, Mr. Granite replied. So every time you swing back and forth, you'll be making electricity. We have to get off the swings and go over the field near the cows and the windmill. I miss Miss Daisy, said Neil the nude kid. She was normal. We used to say Miss Daisy was weird, Michael said, but Mr. Granite is even weirder. Moo, said the cow. Mr. Granite is going overboard with this green stuff, said Ryan. He's falling out of a boat? I asked. No, dumbhead, said Ryan. I mean, he's getting carried away. I don't see anybody carrying him away, I pointed out. I looked around to make sure nobody was carrying Mr. Granite away. Moo, said the cow. I heard that Mr. Granite is working on a machine that makes electricity every time you blink your eyes, Michael told us. We'll have to wear it all like a pair of glasses. That's crazy, I said. I heard that Mr. Granite asked the music teacher, Mr. Loring, to write a song with just one note in it, said Neil the nude kid. Why, we all asked. So he shouldn't waste any notes, Neil said. That will be the most boring song in the history of the world, I said. Moo, agreed the cow. Andrea and her friends were sitting on the bench a few feet away, looking all worried. What's eating you? I asked Andrea. Did you get an A- on the math quiz? No, Arlo, Andrea replied. I got an A+, but I just figured something out. What? Bill asked. Maybe, Mr. Granite isn't a real teacher at all, Andrea said. Did you ever think of that? What do you mean? I asked. Maybe he's just pretending to be a teacher, she said. I think that Mr. Granite is from another planet. That's not, I told her. Think about it, Arlo, Andrea said. Mr. Granite knows a lot about planets and stars and space, right? Yeah. And he doesn't understand the English language very well, right? Yeah. He has supervision too, added Neil. He can see through walls. Did you ever notice that Mr. Granite doesn't have any hair growing out of his ears or nose? Ryan asked. Andrea might be right. After all, the first rule of being grown up is that you have hair growing out of your ears and nose. My dad has to turn his nose hair every week. Maybe Mr. Granite is from another planet. Moo, said the cow. He doesn't look like an alien, said Michael. Aliens are little green guys with big head. Maybe Mr. Granite is disguised as a human, I suggested. Yes, said Ryan. Maybe if we peeled off his human mask underneath, we'll find a little green guy with a big head. Mr. Granite is nice, Emily said. Maybe he's a good alien. Yeah, like an E.T., said Ryan. That's my favorite movie. Maybe Mr. Granite is a nice alien who was left here on Earth, like E.T. There are no nice aliens, Neil said. You're supposed to kill aliens. Yeah, I added, with laser beams. Stop trying to scare Emily, said Andrea. Mr. Granite is probably going to take over the world and turns us into flesh-eating robots, I said. We're got to do something, said Emily, and she went running away. The only problem was that Emily ran right into a cow. She was on the ground, freaking out. What a crybaby. Moo, said the cow. Ooh, ow, said Emily, which is moo upside down and backward. My dad is a policeman, said Michael, and he states you can accuse people of stuff unless you have proof. So let's get proof that Mr. Granite is an alien, said Neil the nude kid. How are you gonna get proof? Ryan asked. I have an idea, Andrea told everybody. Let's follow Mr. Granite home after school. I have my camera in my backpack. We can step around. I take pictures of him when he peels off his human mask, and we'll have proof. Everybody agreed that Andrea was a genius and that she should get the Nobel Prize. That's a prize they give out to people who don't have bells. Chapter 8. The World's Biggest iPod. All afternoon, I was watching Mr. Granite very carefully to see if his face was going to come off. Finally, 3 o'clock came and the bell rang. Any questions? Mr. Granite said as we got our stuff off our cubbies. We're going to destroy our planet? I asked. Will you peel off your face? Neil asked. Don't be silly, replied Mr. Granite. Once we got outside, Michael and Ryan raced to the bike rack. Andrea and Emily were already there. How will we find out where Mr. Granite lives? Asked Emily. We shall drop pieces of candy on the ground, said Ryan. That's what the boys did in E.T. I'm not wasting my candy, I said. We shall stalk Mr. Granite, suggested Michael. You mean we shall hit him with celery? I asked. What good will that do? No, dumbhead, said Andrea. Stalking is... She never got the chance to finish her sentence, because at that very second, Mr. Granite zoomed past us on his bike. Look, said Ryan, there he goes. We all hopped on our bikes and followed Mr. Granite behind carefully not to let him see us. Maybe Mr. Granite will make us our bike fly, said Ryan. That's what E.T. did. Will you forget about E.T. already? Michael told Ryan. Finally, Mr. Granite turned into a driveway. Well, I don't mean he become a driveway. That would be weird. He just rode his bike up into a driveway next to a house. There was a big white box in front of the garage. It had the word pods on it. Hey, check it out, I told everybody. Look at the size of that iPod. Mr. Granite lived in an iPod? Asked Michaels. Man, I asked, how many songs do you think will fit on that iPod? It's not an iPod, dumbhead, said Andrea. It's one of those big storage boxes. It says pod. Oh, it makes sense that Mr. Granite lived in a pod. I saw this movie called Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It had this pod people who look just like humans, but they worked secretly to spread more pods until they could replace the entire human race. It was cool. Anybody who lives in the pod has to be an alien, I said. My mom says we should accept people. My mom says we should accept people no matter where they live, Emily said. Your mom is weird, I told her. Maybe he's building a transmitter in there to connect his home planet, said Ryan, like an E.T. Give it a rest with E.T., will you? I told Ryan. Mr. Granite opened the door and went inside the pod thing. We all snuck up to it like we were secret agents. It was cool. Edward took a little camera out of her backpack. I bet he's taking off his human mask in there, Michael whispered. I'll snap the pictures when he peels off his face, and Red whispered. That will be a real Codex moment, I whispered. I'm scared, whispered Emily. Maybe we should, but she never got the chance to finish her sentence, because at that very second, Mr. Granite popped out of the pot. Eek! We all screamed. Good day, mate, Mr. Granite said. He looked completely normal. What can I do for you, blokes? I said, we were just wondering if you trim your nose hair. You followed me home to ask if I trim my nose hair, asked Mr. Granite. Well, actually, we wanted to know where you were born, said Andrea. I came from Neptune, said Mr. Granite. Wow, we all said, which is mom, and upside down. So it was true. Mr. Granite really is from another planet. Yes, he continued, Neptune. New Jersey. Then my parents moved to Australia. Oh. Chapter 9. Tattletale. I didn't believe for a minute that Mr. Granite was born in New Jersey. He was an alien from another planet for sure. And even though he didn't have a picture of him peeling off his face, we decided there was only one thing left for us to do. We had to tell Mr. Clutch. The next morning, we all met at school early to go to Mr. Clutch's office. When we got there, he was wearing one of those weird square hats we had to wear at graduation, and he was sticking his head out the window. Why are you sticking your hat out the window? Ryan asked. Oh, excuse me, said Mr. Clutch, pulling his head back inside. I had to sharpen my pencil. You have a pencil sharpener outside your window? Asked Michael. No, I was just gathering solar energy to power my special sharpener, Mr. Clutch told us. See, this cap has a school solar panels in it. It was Mr. Granite's idea. Mr. Clutch showed us how to sharpen a pencil with his solar-powered pencil sharpener. It was cool. We wanted to talk to you about Mr. Granite, said Ryan. I'm all ears, Mr. Clutch said. You are not, I told him. You have ears and a nose and a mouth, too. It will be weird to be all ears. It's just enough expression, Dumphead, said Andrea, rolling her eyes. It means Mr. Clutch is listening. I know that, I lied. Anyway, we think there's something weird about Mr. Garnet. Yes, I agree, said Mr. Clutch said. I can't put my finger on it. Why would you want to put your fingers on it? I asked. Mr. Granite lives in a pot, Emily said, and he has no nose here, said Michael. Mr. Clutch, said Andrea, we suspect that Mr. Granite is from another planet. Said Clutch. It's funny you should mention that. The other day I saw a flying saucer in the teacher's lawn. What? We all shouted. You did? Yes, said Mr. Clutch. The teachers were throwing their teacups around again. I'll have to make another announcement about that. If Mr. Granite is an alien, will you have to fire him? Asked Emily. Or attack him with laser beams? Asked Ryan. Said Mr. Clutch. This has never come up before. I'm not sure aliens from other planets are allowed to teach third grade. I'll never check in the Board of Education rulebook. I'm bored of education, I said. In the meantime, said Mr. Clutch, let's all keep our eyes peeled. That will probably hurt, I told him. Can we just watch Mr. Granite instead? Okay, let's do that, he said. I want to know everything about him. I want to know what makes him trick. Mr. Granite ticks? I asked. Maybe there's a clock inside him, like the crocodile in Peter Pan. Maybe there's a bomb inside him, Brian said. Mr. Granite swallowed a bomb? Asked Emily. We've got to do something. Run for your life, shouted Neil the nude kid, and we all went running out of Mr. Clutch's office. Chapter 10. The Truth About Mr. Granite. As it turned out, Mr. Granite didn't have a clock or a bomb inside him. I didn't even hear him trick. That day was a perfectly normal day, or as normal as it can be when your teacher is from another planet. When the 3 o'clock bell rang, Mr. Clutch made an announcement over the intercom. Have a great weekend, everyone, he said. Next week, we'll find out if elementary school is the greenest school in the country. I can almost taste that chocolate cake now. Oh, and teachers, please stop throwing teacups around the teacher's lawn. Thank you. Me, Michael, and Ryan rode our bikes home. We were pretty tired because we had been riding our bikes all day in class, but that's when I got the greatest idea in the history of the world. Hey, I told the guys, I know how we can make our school the great greenest school in the country. How, they asked. Let's paint it green. AJ, Ryan said, you're a genius. That's why I'm in the gifted and talented program, I said modestly. Everybody agreed that I should get the Nobel Prize. That night, after dinner, I told my mom there was a bingo game at school. Michael and Ryan made up another excuses. Michael brought a bucket of green paint. He found it in his basement. Ryan brought some paintbrushes. He rode our bikes and met at the school. Okay, I told the guys. Let's start by painting the front door. Michael opened up the paint can. Ryan gave me a brush. I was about to dip the brush into the paint when the most amazing thing in the history of the world happened. A guy jumped out from behind the bushes. Freeze, dirtbags, he shouted. Ah! It was Officer Spence, the school security guard. He was supposed to protect the school from bad guys and criminals, not from us. Let's get out of here, shouted Michael. We hopped on our bikes and pedaled as fast as we could down the street. I never even turned around to see it. Officer Spence was chasing us. Phew, that was a close one, Ryan said when we were a few blocks away from school. I don't think Officer Spence saw our faces, said Michael. Let's go home, I said. Just as we were about to turn the corner, I realized something. This was Mr. Granite's street. Let's go over to Mr. Granite's house, I suggested. Maybe we can catch him taking his face off. We paddled over to Mr. Granite's house. It was easy to find because of that giant pot thing on the grass. There was a light on inside the garage. We parked our bikes across the street and tiptoed over to the garage. Like secret agents, it was cool. Shh, Ryan whispered. Nobody could scream if he peels off his face. We peeked between the cracks in the garage door. Do you see anything? Michael whispered. Look, Ryan whispered back. Mr. Grenade is in there. Yeah, over on the left, I whispered. What's he doing? Ryan whispered. He's building something, Michael whispered. And you'll never believe in a million hundred years when we saw Mr. Granite building in them. I'm not gonna tell you. Okay, I tell you. But you have to read the next chapter to find out. So na boo boo on you. Chapter 11. My teacher is an alien. Mr. Granite was building a spaceship. It was red and black and silver, and it looked just like the spaceship you see in movies. It was cool. Andrea was right, I whispered. Mr. Granite is from another, but I never got the chance to finish my work because at that moment the garage door started going up. Mr. Granite, the alien, was standing there looking right at us. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I had to think fast. Freeze! Third back, I yelled. You're an alien and we know it. Mr. Granite put his hand in the air. Then he realized we didn't have a gun or anything, so he put them down. Yes, I admit it, he said sadly. I'm not from New Journey. I'm from the planet Etnard in a galaxy far, far away. Wow, we all said, which is bomb inside down. Etnard, I said. Isn't that granite spelled backward? Yes, Mr. Granite said. Everyone on Etnard is named Granite. Doesn't it make things confusing when everybody has the same name? Asked Ryan. It does, Mr. Granite replied. It was sent to Earth to help you stop global warming and to come back with some new names for our people. Now my work here is done. I must return to Etnard. My spaceship is finished. I just need some rocket fuel so I can blast off. Wait a minute, Ryan said. How do we know you're not yanking out chain? Prove you're an alien. Yeah, I said. Let's see you peel off your face. Well, okay, Mr. Granite said as he put his hands over his chin. I covered my eyes with my hands. I wanted to see Mr. Granite peel off his face, but at the same time, I didn't want to see what was still underneath. What if it was scary? So I covered my eyes, but I opened my fingers so I could look between them. Mr. Granite pulled up at his neck, and the skin started to come loose. Then he peeled off his entire face. You'll never believe in a million hundred years what he looked like underneath. He looked exactly the same. Hey, Ryan said, that face looked just like the one you peeled off. It never hurt to have an extra face, said Mr. Granite. Even though Mr. Granite peeled off face looked the same as his regular face, it was still cool. Don't tell Mr. Clutch, Mr. Granite said. Our lips are sealed, I told him, but not with glue. That will be weird. Chapter 12. Sad news. I couldn't sleep that night. All I could do was thinking about Granite, Mr. Granite. What if he was lying? What if he really came here to take over our planet and turn us into killer zombie robot slave? Stuff like that happened all the time. You know, I wish I had been able to buy one of those laser beam pens at stables. Maybe Mr. Granite was just pretending to be nice so it will be easier for him to take over the world. Maybe I should tell Mr. Clutch if I didn't see anything and Mr. Granite took over the planet, it will be all my fault. This was the hardest decision I ever had to make. My brain hurt from thinking so much. I was afraid my head was going to explode. Did you finish your homework? My mom asked me on Monday morning. Homework, I said. Aliens from another planet could be attacking at this very second, and they're worried about homework? Finally, I decided to tell Mr. Clutch what I knew. As soon as I got to school, I marched into his office. He had a machine on his desk. It looked like a little microwave oven. Hey, check this out, AJ, said Mr. Clutch. It's called the Ultimate Recycler. This gizmo can turn a can into a bottle, or a bottle into a can. So instead of throwing away a bottle, you just turn it into a can. And instead of throwing away a can, you just turn it into a bottle. This will be great for the environment. Why not just take the can or bottle and rinse it out? I asked. Then you can use it again. Said Mr. Clutch. That's a good idea, AJ. No wonder you're in the gifted and talented program. And pick up the Ultimate Recycler and threw it into the recycling bin. Mr. Clutch, I said, I have proof that Mr. Granite is from another planet. I saw him building a spaceship in his garage. Mr. Clutch said. Well, I have some news for you, AJ. I looked through the board of the education rule book very carefully, and there is nothing in there that says alien from another planet can teach third grade. So Mr. Granite can stay on Earth if he wants to? That's right, said Mr. Clutch. In fact, I'll call him in here right now to tell him the good news. Mr. Clutch called Mr. Granite on the intercom. A few minutes later, Mr. Granite came into the office. When he saw me, he looked mad. It's okay, Mr. Clutch told Mr. Granite. I know you're from another planet, but I think you're an excellent teacher, and I want you to stay at elementary school. Mr. Clutch and Mr. Granite talked, which was weird. You are very kind, Mr. Granite said, but my work here is done. I'm ready to return to my home planet of Athene North. I'll blast off Friday. But I thought you said you didn't have my rocket full, I said. I don't need rocket fuel anymore, Mr. Granite told me. I met with Mr. Doctor over the weekend, and he figured out a way to power my spaceship with potatoes. Wow, I knew you will power a car with potatoes, and I know you could power a computer with potatoes. But how are you going to get the spaceship off the ground with just potato power? Is that impossible? I guess it is, Mr. Granite said. We're going to microwave the potatoes. Chapter 13. Saying goodbye to Mr. Granite. At 3 o'clock on Friday, the school secretariat, Mr. Patty, made an announcement that everybody had to go to all-purpose room. When we got there, Mr. Clutch was up on the stage. He was holding a piece of paper. I have big news, Mr. Clutch told us. Mr. Clutch has a big news, I whispered to Ryan. Are we the greenest school in the country? Asked Neil, the rude nude kid. No, we came in second place, Mr. Clutch said. Everybody groaned because that meant we weren't going to have a chocolate cake party. Second place? Michael asked. How could any school be greener than ours? Well, said Mr. Clutch, the student at one of the other schools actually painted their school green. Too bad we didn't think of that. I looked at Ryan. Ryan looked at Michael. Michael looked at me. So what's the big news? Asked Neil, the nude kid. The big news is that we received a letter from the President of the United States, said Mr. Clutch. Wow, we all said, which is Mom. Upside down, I stuck my tongue out of Andrea because she had thought it was a dumb idea to write to the President. Mr. Clutch read the letter. Dear student of elementary school, thank you for the nice letter. I just wanted to let you know that I do not have a nose attached to my foot. Sincerely, the President. It was cool to get a letter from the President, even if the letter made no sense at all. I have more big news, Mr. Clutch told us. Our third grade teacher, Mr. Granite, is from a planet called Athene North, and he's going home today, so we're going to have a going away party with chocolate cake. Yay! Everybody yelled. We went out of the playground where there was the biggest chocolate cake in the history of the world. Everybody was out there, even Jackie, Mackie, Mr. Bread cut the cake, and Mr. Jeffy passed out piece to everybody. Mr. Granite spaceship was out in the field. Near the cows, it was covered with potatoes. Moo, said the cow. We stuffed our faces with so much cake. I thought I was gonna throw up. It was the greatest day of my life. After we finished, Mr. Granite put on a spacesuit, and he went over to say goodbye to him. It was really sad. I'm going to miss you, kid, said Mr. Granite. When I get home, I'm going to name my Athene North friends AJ, Andrea, Ryan, Emily, Michael, and Neil. We'll miss you too, said Andrea. I hope that after I am gone, Mr. Granite told us, you will keep saving energy and living green. We will, we all shouted. Everybody was sad to see Mr. Granite go. Emily cried, of course, so did some of the teachers. Mr. Granite waved to us as he climbed into his spaceship. Everybody gathered around. Mrs. Yonkers went over to her computer and announced the countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, said Miss Yonkers. Begin microwaving the potatoes. Our science teacher, Mr. Doctor, flipped a switch. Nothing happened for like a million hundred seconds. Then there was a little ding sound. Steam started pouring out of the potatoes. The whole field smelled like baked potatoes. Slowly, the spaceship began rising off the ground. Lift off, yelled Mr. Yonker. We have lift off. That's when the most amazing thing in the history of the world happened. One of the cows must have liked the smell of baked potatoes because it came running over the spaceship. The cow bumped right into it. The spaceship was going up crook. How soon we have a problem, shouted Mr. Doctor. The spaceship zoomed to the left, then it zoomed to the right. It was zigzagging back and forth in the sky over the school. Abandoned ship, shouted Miss Yonkers. Abandoned ship. The door to the spaceship opened, and Mr. Granite jumped out. A parachute opened, and he floated back down to Earth. Well, he almost floated back down to Earth. On the way down, his parachute landed on the windmill. The ropes got all tangled up. Mr. Granite was caught on the windmill. He was spinning around and around. It was a real Kodak moment. You should have been there. Meanwhile, Mr. Granite's spaceship crash landed in a field across the street from our school. It exploded. Pieces of baked potato went flying everywhere. It was cool, and we got to see it live and a person. Well, that's pretty much that way it all sent down. The windmill finally stopped turning, and the teachers were able to get Mr. Granite back onto the ground again. Maybe Mr. Granite will build another spaceship, or maybe he'll just stay on Earth and be our teacher. Maybe Andrea will stop recycling her toilet paper and pull out her hat in the paper shreddedly. Maybe there won't be any more flying saucers in the teacher's lawn. Maybe Jackie Mackie will stop sucking her own toe. Maybe the president will trim the hair on its nose attached to his foot. Maybe Brian will stop talking about E.T. Maybe they'll start selling laser beam pens at Staples. Maybe the sun will explode. Maybe Emily will stop running into cows. Maybe we'll find out what makes Mr. Granite sick. Maybe we'll be able to hear a word like Nate and Uranus without giggling. But it won't be easy. So I already read this book. If you like it, please subscribe and like. And I think the story is a little longer. But I think the story is very funny and good. So bye everyone. So let's see you tomorrow. Bye.